Hi, I'm Joe and welcome to the channel. In this Inspired By series, I like to look at a specific genre of music and try to come up with an original piece of music that highlights some of the key essential techniques. I break down each individual guitar part for you, offer you some insights on the genre, and as always in the description below, you can download the tracks that I use for free to practice along with. Now I'm very excited about this one. This actually happens to be my first viewer requested one, and this one's going to be on disco. If you have any other genres that you might like to see, please consider leaving a comment down below and letting me know. And while you're down there, if you find any value in this video, please consider supporting the channel for free by subscribing down below and hitting the like button. All these things help me out a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. Let's go ahead now and jump into the track. Before I break down the guitar parts, I just want to say some quick words about disco music in general. You can't help but listen to disco music and just feel good, in my opinion. It's such a great groove-based music. It probably has roots obviously in R&B and funk and even some jazz, especially for the chord flavors that they're using inside of the music. And I do remember that there's this whole movement happened called Disco Sucks. I think it happened around the time like Disco Duck and things like that came out. Sure, they over-commercialized disco completely and kind of ruined it from that standpoint. But, you know, this guy, I think he started this whole movement to even blow up disco albums inside of a ballpark. I mean, this thing got completely crazy. But nothing could be further from the truth. Disco does not suck. In fact, if you listen to it now, it has got so many complex things happening, all wrapped up in this nice, happy little pop little package. It's really amazing to listen to. If you listen to the chord progressions, they're not your standard chord progression in most cases. And a lot of times, I found that there was actually some modal chord progressions. A lot of Dorian, chord progressions happening. Not your standard type of 1-4-5 was happening at all in some of these songs. And that's what was really interesting about it, is it was sneaky. The people that were writing this music were sneaking in a lot of fantastic chords as well as arrangements. If you listen to the arrangements of these disco songs, you'll hear that there's actually full orchestras happening along with horns. And just and on top of all the other instrumentation that's happening, maybe it might be like a Rhodes piano in there, guitar, bass, drums. If you listen to this, the way things are interwoven inside of the music is absolutely incredible. Some of the greatest arrangements have happened in disco music, in my opinion. And just take some time and maybe pull up a playlist and take a listen to all the things that are happening in a song. It's very, very impressive. So inside of this disco world, there was a lot of innovation going on as far as just song form. Even the sounds, the tones that they were getting, just amazing, incredible stuff. So if you're not familiar with disco music, I would encourage you just to take a listen. That's the nice thing about music. We can always borrow bits and pieces from different genres. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump in and look at the first guitar part. So the first guitar part is laying down the harmonic foundation for the song. And as I just mentioned, I found a lot of these songs were kind of modal based, some different types of chord progressions. And in this case here, we're kind of in the key of B flat, but I'm actually centering things around the C minor chord, which would be a Dorian chord progression. Because everything wants to, you have your key, but you also have your tonal center. And in this case here, this chord progression kind of lends itself to go back to C minor and not the one chord of the B flat. So the chord progression is very simple. It's C minor to B flat to G minor to F, and then it repeats. Now, one thing you need to get underneath your fingers if you're going to dive into disco music is minor 7th chords and even minor 11 chords, and I'm going to show you a couple of those here. A minor 7 chord is basically taking your minor chord and adding a 7th to it. It just adds a nice little flavor to the song. I'm sorry, to the chord itself. And how am I getting that 7th? Well, I'm walking up the musical alphabet. So I have C as my root for that chord, and if I go up 7 scale degrees, C, D, E, F, G, B, and since I'm in B flat, it's a B flat, by adding that to the minor chord, I'm getting a minor 7. And I'm keeping the B flat kind of the same, as far as it's just natural B flat chord. And then I'm doing a G minor 7 to an F, and sometimes I'll add in the B flat on the F as well, which could make it an extension, or you might think of it also as like a F at 11, because again, if you count up the scale degrees, you go past the octave, it'll be the 11th, which would land on the B flat. Anyway, that's the basic chord progression happening. So the first guitar part is basically just staying on the middle strings, the D, G, and B string, and playing that chord progression. And again, I'm kind of just using the shapes. What's nice about guitar and funk music, or any type of music in that matter, the bass player generally is playing the root note, or there's some other instrument, so you don't have to always play the root note in your chords. And that's what's happening here. So I'm basically just picking up the G, B flat, and also the E flat of my C minor 7 right here. And then I'm opening that up to get to my B flat, right? It's from this shape, but I'm just using, again, the middle strings. And for the G minor 7, I'm putting down my 3rd finger to pick up the G, but leaving my 1st finger down, barring across, and then I'll slide down to the F. And the rhythm pattern, everything with kind of disco music and funk music really dances around a 16th note grid. So you have your downbeats of 1, 2, 3, 4. I should call those quarter notes, not downbeats, but quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can break that in half and we get eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if you break it down further, you get 16th notes, which you would say 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So all around that 1E and a 2E and a, inside of there is kind of your grid that you play along with when you're kind of composing this music and playing this music. And that's what really makes it nice, is that that's how these arrangements work. You can have some guitar parts and other instruments playing on the downbeat itself, but then offset on those other subdivisions of the beat, you have something else happening. And that's always kept things, keeps things interesting and jumping around inside the music. So for this chord progression, we're doing just some basic little thing here. And then I'll hammer on to get that G down to the F. Now another interesting thing to do, flip your pick around and use the back end of the pick. It acts like a little bit of an EQ pedal. It dulls the sound a little bit. And I also rolled the tone off a little bit for this sound, just to get it to sit in the mix. And if you also notice too, a lot of the great rhythm players, funk type rhythm players, and even the disco folks, they actually don't pick straight down. It's more of an angle this way. If you look at Nile Rodgers, watch his picking hand. It's kind of arched this way. And that pick attack has a lot to do also with the sound and characteristics that's coming out of the guitar. So experiment with that. And that's how you can also kind of be your own tone pedal, if you will, your own tone creation by just moving your hand and your pick around into different positions. So in here, I had the pick backwards, and you'll see, hopefully this camera will pick it up, it's less bright and then using the top of the pick. So one thing to keep in mind, when there's these repetitive chord progressions happening, you'll notice that usually on the last time going into a different section of the song, they'll do a variation of what they played earlier. And that's exactly what I did in this song. So I basically play that 3 times. And then on the last time, I do a variation on the F chord. I do something a little bit different. So just adding that little variation will spice things up, especially to the listener's ear, and also signals that you're going to a different section of the song. So guitar part 2 basically is also playing the same chord progression, obviously, but in a different part of the neck. And that's always nice to do when you're trying to arrange your own music. If you have one guitar part down low, try to fill up the other frequencies inside of a mix by playing elsewhere on the guitar. And I'm also doing a little bit of a variation on the chords. So instead of playing like a C minor 7, I'm actually doing like a C minor 11. I'm adding 11th in there as well. And I'm omitting certain things. I don't have like the 5th in a chord as an example on some of these as well. And that's things that you can do if you find sometimes that you're writing music and you're listening back and things sound muddy, you can actually remove some of the chord tones from there. And obviously the first one that's good to go usually is the 5th. You always want to try to keep maybe the 3rd in there and the 7th in there, because those are generally the tonal characteristics of a chord that you're on. So kind of preserve those, but the other chord tones you can experiment with and sometimes remove them altogether. So I'm playing basically up here a C minor 11 chord, and I also put on a phaser onto the sound just to give it a little bit of a variation to the first part. And I'm doing the same type of chord things happening here. Again, the C minor, 11 in this case here. And I'm picking up the B flat this way, which would be this type of inversion. And then this would be kind of like a G minor 11. But I'm not worried about the root note at all. I'm just using the inside. So this might look familiar to you too. Like, might be the same as the top shape, if you will, of the of an F suspended chord. Or you could think of it if you had your G minor, full G minor here, and you lifted up your ring, and you lift it up, and you lift up your ring and pinky, you'll be left with just that. So that would be your notes here, your chords. And also I'm hammering on, just like we did for the hammer on up here on the G note, I'm actually hammering on here for the G note, and then I'll lift off to reveal the F, and again that F is coming from this bar shape here. And I do the same thing as well, where I do the variation rhythmically to match the first guitar part, and I flip the pick around too. So it goes like this. Guitar part 3 is mimicking a keyboard line. What's nice to do sometimes, might be a nice exercise to do, write out your chord progressions that you have for your music, and just write all the notes out, and look for common tones in there, but then also look for ways to easily step down when the chord changes into another chord tone, and try to find the quickest path to get there. So in this case here, I'm starting off, here's our C minor 7 up here, and I'm starting off on the E flat. And then I walk down to the D, which would be part of the B flat. And then going back to the B flat down here, which would be part of the G minor 7. Walking down to the A, which would be part of the F. So you can hear that inside of the chord progression. You can hear this natural step down. And all I'm doing is just kind of doing 16th notes. And I'm palm muting. I'm taking the fleshy part of my hand, and I'm palm muting that string. And if you also notice, I'm staying on the same string to do this. I find that tonally, the string, if you stay on the same string, it tonally sounds the same. If you notice, I could do the same line up here, right? But I find that I'm hearing the top strings, since they're thinner, just sound a little weaker to me. Or a little tinny than playing it down here. And then, again, palm muting that line. But experiment with that sometimes. If you have a guitar line that you came up with that might be across multiple strings, try to keep it on one string just to see what it sounds like from a tonal perspective. Guitar part 4 is basically your good old-fashioned chunks that you would have on beats 2 and 4 of like a Motown song or rhythm and blues song. It's basically just taking some chord sounds. Usually it's double stops, usually 2 notes, 2 or 3 notes. So double stops or triple stops that you would just play chunking along on beats 2 and 4 just to kind of give an accent to what's happening. So what I've chose to do here is off of this chord, I chose just to use the top half of the chords to do the chunking on, essentially. And if you didn't notice, I added on a little bit of a envelope filter to kind of give a vocal quality. So I'm basically doing the same chord progression, but just chunking them out on 2 and 4. And again, all I'm doing is I'm playing off of that shape here that we had. And I'm first starting off on the top 2 strings for the C. And I'm just moving my finger down now to pick up basically the D note in the B chord. And then I'm moving my first finger over to the G string, and I'm picking up now the B flat here and the F for the G minor 7. And then sliding this finger down to get the F chord, top shape of the F chord, which would be the F and the A. So. And by doing that, by keeping your fingerings close together and maybe moving 1 or 2 notes around in your chord progression, you actually introduce a little bit of a melody line. Now, no disco song will be complete without a breakdown, and that's exactly what this guitar part 5 is doing. And it's doing a very common thing, which would be more of a staccato type of rhythm pattern, again dancing across that 16th note grid. And this is a very common sound. And I have to tell you, I had a lot of trouble recording this and getting in the pocket doing this. I find my natural tendency is to rush, so you kind of have to lay back a little bit and just relax and play these parts as best as you can inside the pocket. Don't be too stiff with them. And basically, I'm sticking with that same exact chord shape that we did for part 1, but down here. And now again, I've changed up the rhythm value a little bit to make it more staccato and more interesting during the breakdown. And if you notice, I'm also still doing that hammer on here, where I'm hammering on to the G here. And again, I flip the pick around, and I'm just trying to be as relaxed and loose as possible when you play that part. Guitar part 6, since it's a little bit more of a challenging part, I decided to keep things kind of simple as far as what we're doing. We're going to play inside of the G minor pentatonic scale. We all love this shape, right? And I added a little bit of an envelope filter here just to give a little bit of a character to this melody line inside of the song. And I'm also adding the blue note, the flat 5. And all I'm doing is I'm basically going to be playing up that scale and sliding in from the flat 5 to the 5. And I just do that 3 times. And then at the end, just like we learned to do a variation on the 4th time around in something, I go ahead and add a little bit of another blues line to the top. So all I'm doing there is I'm sliding into the root. I'm doing that slide again from the flat 5 to the 5. And back down. Very simple line, but a very effective line. And the last thing to know about that guitar line is it doesn't start on the downbeat. Remember what I said earlier about dancing around that 16th note grid. This guitar part actually starts on the 1E end of a beat. So right before 1E end 2, it starts actually on the 3rd subdivision of the 16th note pattern, 1E end And that's a very interesting thing to note, especially when you're, again, writing this type of style of music, is that you have this wonderful 16th note grid that you can play around with and place your parts on different parts of that spectrum. Well, that's another video down for this Inspired By series. Again, if you found any value in this video whatsoever, please consider supporting the channel for free by subscribing down below and hitting the like button. Also, if you have any other types of genres that you think would be great for this series, please let me know in the comments below. As always, I wish you a great day.